Good morning, everyone. Pursuant to Standing Order 108-2 and the motion adopted by the committee on Tuesday, September 18th, 2018, the committee is beginning its study of supporting families after the loss of a child. Today, the committee will hear from department officials and other witnesses. I'm very pleased to welcome, joining us today from the Department of Employment and Social Development, Andrew Brown, Director General, Employment Insurance Policy Directorate, Skills and Employment Branch. Welcome, sir. And also Rutha Astravas, am I pronouncing that correctly? Director, Employment Insurance Policy and Special Benefits Policy. Thank you both for joining us today. Are we doing 10 minutes? 7 minutes? 7 minutes? The next 7 minutes are all yours. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair, members of the committee. Good morning, bonjour. Je m'appelle Andrew Brown.
My name is Andrew Brown. I am the Director General for Employment Insurance Policy at the Department of Employment and Social Development. And as you heard, I am accompanied by Ruth Astravas, who is the Director of Policy for EI Special Benefits. Let me begin by thanking the committee for the opportunity to address this very important issue, namely parents who have suffered the loss of an infant child and exploring ways to support them.
Who have lost an infant child to sudden or unexpected causes, including the case of sudden infant death syndrome. I can't imagine the suffering experienced by families and parents in these cases. Yesterday, one of your own colleagues spoke of the tremendous grief when infant death struck his own family. I'll begin by sharing with the committee some information on the EI program and the support that it offers for Canadians. The EI program provides temporary income support when workers are unemployed due to job loss, known as regular benefits, and also in specific situations that may occur over the course of one's working career, known as EI Special Benefits. EI Special Benefits play an important role in helping individuals balance work and life responsibilities. Special benefits include maternity, parental, sickness, and caregiving benefits, and I'll speak about how these benefits and how they're relevant when an infant dies. I should also mention that the Canada Labour Code provides unpaid leave protection for workers in the federal jurisdiction that are aligned to EI special benefits, and provinces and territories maintain their own employment standards that provide leaves to workers in their jurisdictions. Le comité devrait savoir que pour avoir droit.
I would also like the committee to know that to qualify for EI special benefits, workers need to have accumulated at least 600 hours of insurable employment during the 52-week period immediately before the start date of their claim or since their last EI claim. When families are welcoming new children, maternity and parental benefits are available to eligible parents
or adoptive parents, including same-sex parents, following the birth or placement of a child for the purpose of adoption. The purpose of the benefit is to support parents to provide care for their new child or children. Parents can choose to receive parental benefits up to a maximum of 35 weeks, paid over 12 months, or up to 61 weeks, paid at a lower rate over a period of 18 months. In the unfortunate event of a child's death, these benefits end in the week that the child dies, as there's no longer a need to provide care to that child. EI maternity benefits support a birth mother's physical and emotional recovery for up to 15 weeks surrounding childbirth. As they are linked to the mother's health and not the child, these benefits continue to be payable in the tragic event that the child passes away. Le régime offre également.
The EI program also provides support for family caregiving. The EI Family caregiver benefit provides up to 15 weeks of benefits to provide care to an adult family member with a critical illness or injury, and up to 35 weeks of benefits to provide care to a child with a critical illness or injury. The EI Compassionate Care Benefit provides up to 26 weeks of income support to provide end-of-life care to a family member. Specifically, a family member with a serious medical condition and a significant risk of death within a 26-week period. In the case of these caregiving benefits, should the care recipient pass away, the benefits end in the week that the family member dies, the same as for the parental benefits.
May be eligible to receive up to 15 weeks of EI sickness benefits should they be unable to work following the death of their child. The sickness benefit provides income support to claimants who are unable to work due to illness or injury, including incapacity due to pronounced emotional or psychological stress. These supports may provide some measure of assistance for parents in the event of the loss of a child. In recent years, there have been a number of changes to improve EI special benefits. The government expanded the eligible caregiver support network to include immediate and extended family members rather than just parents for the EI family caregiver benefits for children. It's also now easier to access caregiving benefits as we allow medical doctors and nurse practitioners to sign medical certificates and to simplify the application process for families. And amendments have also been made to the Canada Labour Code to ensure that workers in federally regulated sectors have the job protection they need while receiving the caregiving parental or maternity benefits. So, Mr. Chair, that concludes my opening remarks, and we would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. And John, you're up first. John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just before we get going, I'm just wondering, I know we invited the minister to attend. I'm just wondering if has there been an update there. I understand that Mr. Duclos cannot be here for the first meeting, but from what I understand, you're maybe trying to get him for the last meeting. Is there any update on where that is?
Yeah, we'll talk about this in a bit. We are still working to try and get the minister. The last possible meeting is also not a possibility. It's, I believe, the National Housing Day. So I'm not sure that he will be here in Ottawa, but we are working on other possibilities at this point, and I'll update the committee when we have some news. Okay.
Would if he can't come, has there been an approach to the deputy minister at all to be?
I believe so. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Not a problem.
To our witnesses, thank you very much for being here today on what's an important issue. And certainly, what this comes from is from my colleague from Alberta with some concerns in terms of parents sometimes having to make a pretty difficult choice between what their financial and family needs may be. So, in your opinion, do you see this as an opportunity? Is the federal system, the EI system, supporting grieving parents? Are there programs in place, or do you feel that there are some opportunities here to help parents who have lost an infant child?
Thank you for your question. So first of all, we're here for the Employment Insurance Program, and our remarks and our questions will be focused on explaining how those benefits do work. I think it's important to note, as Andrew said, that there are a number of different EI benefits that support parents, that support families, so that, as you mentioned, in the difficult circumstance where a family member or a family has suffered the loss of another family member, we do have different special benefits depending on the circumstance. In that parental benefits do cease. However, as Andrew indicated, EI sickness benefits may be possible. It's always important for a claimant to contact Service Canada if anything happens during their EI claim, because those circumstances may affect how their claim continues.
So is there any flexibility at all through the EI program for a parent who is on maternity leave but does lose an infant child during that maternity leave? Is there flexibility there at all?
So for the maternity benefit, which is intended for pregnant or nursing mothers after giving birth, that benefit does continue to be paid because the intent of the benefit is to support the mother's recovery. So if the infant child dies while receiving maternity benefits, she would continue to receive those up to the 15 weeks that are available.
Thank you. Does Service Canada have any other specialized programs for dealing with parents who have lost an infant child? Do you know? I know you touched on some of the EI programs, but are there any other specialized programs through Service Canada to address a parent who has lost an infant child? And I should say, Mr. Brown, I appreciate in your opening remarks mentioning my colleague from Calgary Shepherd and his SO31 yesterday and the loss of his youngest. I do appreciate that in your comments. Thank you.
I think it's important to note that there's no specific benefit related to bereavement under the employment insurance program. We've noted what the circumstances are if the care recipient, or in this case the child dies, benefits do end if they're parental benefits, or even in the case of family caregiver benefits for children. Let's say that child was critically ill prior to the death, those unfortunately do end. There are possibly other government programs that may support families at the federal or provincial territorial level, and we're also aware that there are a number of other employer or community NGO supports supporting families.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's my understanding that if a parent is on paternity leave and they lose a child, their benefits would cease almost immediately. Do you think that's fair? Am I right on that, or do you think are there some opportunities for us to extend the paternity leave on the time that a parent would lose an infant child? I just don't think it's, in my opinion, fair that we're forcing that parent to go back to work immediately. Just, I think we've all seen the bereavement and the grief that we'd be going through. Do you think that's appropriate, and do we have an opportunity there to extend those benefits?
So I think it's important to acknowledge the difficult circumstances that parents face. Grieving is a very difficult and long process. But the way that the employment insurance benefits do work, while the parental benefits end at the end of the week of the death of the child, perhaps important to note that EI benefits are paid on a Sunday to Saturday basis. So if the child unfortunately dies on a Tuesday, that whole week up to Saturday is still paid. It's just the following week that's no longer paid.
Doesn't that sort of highlight the problem here, that we're basing the benefits for a grieving parent on what day of the week the child died? I think this shows that we found a gap in the system that I think we can address through something like this.
If I may add, there are different kinds of leave that may be available to parents. So under the Canada Labour Code, there is, so that's for employees of federally regulated private sector. There's a bereavement leave that is currently available. It's 3 days paid leave immediately after the death of a loved one, including for infants. But also, those leave provisions, many leave provisions under the code were enhanced as part of Budget 2017. So when those changes do come into force, employees in this federally regulated sector will have access to 5 days of bereavement leave, the first 3 of which will be paid. In addition, employees will have the right to request flexible work arrangements as well as leave for family responsibilities. So to say that these leaves could be used by parents following the tragic death of their child. We always encourage EI claimants to reach out to their employers to see what other types of benefits or leaves may be available to them. But as Andrew mentioned, it's not just the parental benefits that leave. Sick leave or sickness benefits may also be a possibility to continue to be on leave and to recover from that tragic event. 10
seconds. Thank you very much.
Thank you. MP Long, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning to our presenters. Thank you for your presentations. In my office, we've had some parents come in actually quite recently with this very, very sad circumstance. And I know from a personal standpoint, one of my best friends went through this, several years ago. And the level of devastation, and in turn, being now in politics and running an MP's office and being involved in government, as a government, if we can't be there for these parents in a meaningful way, not a token way, a meaningful way, then, we're not doing enough. So I guess my first question would be, the sickness benefit is intended for employees who are unable to work, obviously because of illness, injury, or quarantine. But it can also be claimed by someone who's bereaved, provided they qualify and have a medical note. What is the estimated portion of EI sickness beneficiaries who access the benefit due to death of a loved one?
Thank you for your question, and thank you for acknowledgement of the difficult circumstances, including of your colleague.
It's troubling.
Yeah. So for EI sickness benefits, we do not actually collect data or ask the claimant the reason that precipitated their claim. So we don't have any data on how many of those claimants are a result of bereavement or of losing their child. We simply know what their return to work date would be on their medical certificate.
Okay, thank you for that. Do you know what proportion of individuals claiming sickness benefits for grief or bereavement normally exhaust the 15-week period?
So as I mentioned earlier, we don't collect data on the reason, but I can comment that the average duration of EI sickness benefits in 2016-17, so last fiscal year, was 10 weeks. However, we also know that approximately 37% of all EI sickness claimants do exhaust, or in other words, use up all 15 weeks of benefits available to them.
Okay. What information or research do we have on differences between how bereaved parents of young children may use EI sick benefits as opposed to other beneficiaries?
We unfortunately don't have that information specifically for that subgroup. These are all very important questions, and we are always looking to learn more about the trends and reasons for EI sickness claims. And so we note your comment and your question.
Okay, thank you. Has ESDC considered the benefits, costs, and risks of other program approaches for those returning to work after claiming EI sickness benefits after the loss of a loved one, such as partial hours? I know an instance in my office, we helped to initiate this, but access to some therapy, reduced benefits over a longer period. Have you considered?
So I guess let me a little bit echo what Rutha was saying there in terms of we don't have sort of a breakdown with respect to people, the reasons that people are accessing sickness benefits. So I can't speak to the situation of them using sickness benefits as a result of a grieving situation where they're unable to work. But what I can tell you is that we certainly see that people are make a progressive return to work in some cases. And there were changes that were made to the Employment Insurance Act earlier this year. These are provisions known as the working while on claim provisions. And they've been now extended to the EI sickness benefit to help claimants who wish to sort of stage their return to work. So previously, if a person who has under EI sickness up to 15 weeks, suppose they had used 10 weeks of benefits already, they still had 5 remaining. And over that 5-week period, they worked part-time. They earned perhaps $300 a week.
Right.
We would reduce their EI benefits by $300 a week. In other words, dollar for dollar under the old rules. Under the new rules that came in with changes to the EI Act in August of this year, they benefit from these working while on claim provisions, which mean that the EI benefit is adjusted by 50 cents on the dollar. So if they earn $300 a week, their EI benefit is reduced by only $150 per week. And the intent here is to not penalize people if they attempt a progressive return to work. So this is something that has been introduced into the program to provide some more flexibility in terms of sickness benefits.
Do you feel that it's working?
So it would be too early for me to say whether that is working. We know in the past, though, that many people receiving sickness benefits, so just to let you know, there were about 379,000 people who claimed EI sickness benefits in that same year, 2016-17.
So how many again, sorry?
379,000 workers claimed EI sickness benefits.
Yeah.
And among them, roughly 60,000 did some work while they were receiving EI sickness benefits. So that's a group that we expect would benefit from these provisions of working while on claim. But we, again, don't know the component that may have been
sure.
in a bereavement situation.
Okay, thank you for your answers. Thank you.
Madam Sansusi, please.
Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation. It was clear to me when the sponsor of this bill, Mr. Richards, met with me to discuss this, that we needed to focus on it. I'm happy with the study that we're doing, that it will allow us to see how we can help these parents who are grieving, because it's one of the worst situations that someone can live through in their lives. And in preparation for this study, there's an organization in my riding which is called Les Amis du Crépuscule, who help people in grieving, and parents who are grieving call upon their services because it's a very difficult situation to get through in life. I've been thinking about how we can help parents who find themselves in this situation. We know that since the beginning of the 1990s, the government no longer pays into EI pot. It comprises contributions from employers and employees. As you've said, there are now a series of special benefits that can meet the needs of workers. But as you also highlighted, because of what's been accumulated as work hours, we find ourselves in a situation where today 4 out of 10 Canadians have access to EI. We know that increasingly work is part-time and on call, and many women are the ones experiencing this situation. So we're in a situation where 6 out of 10 workers don't qualify for EI. And among these workers, there must certainly be women and men who find themselves in the situation of being a grieving parent. In this context, how do we ensure that we can develop a program? What reflections should we undertake at this committee to find the best way to help these grieving parents when they need help?
Alors, je pense qu'il y a,
I think that, well, if I can simplify a bit, the context of the question a bit, there are 2 important aspects worth noting. First of all, there's the EI program and access to the EI program. And secondly, whether we have in the program measures that could meet the needs of families in these circumstances, these tragic and difficult circumstances. Concerning access to the EI program, a number of changes were made in recent years to improve the program. In particular, I would like to highlight the change what's called the new entrant provisions.
For people who are newly entering the workforce or re-entering the workforce, which often has an impact upon younger Canadians as well as newcomers to Canada. But it's true, as you indicate, that there are many people who are not able to access the program due to not meeting the hours requirement. And so there certainly are stakeholders who push for reducing the hours requirement. And I would point out that that is something that we expect would assist more people to qualify for employment insurance. But it wouldn't help all people to qualify. And one of the other reasons there is, as you mentioned, there are many people working in non-standard work, ou travail atypique. Des personnes même.
There are people who even don't work in circumstances that we recognize as being an insurable job, people who don't pay into EI, they don't pay in, and but they don't have any support either.
Challenges, I would say, for the program to look at how we can continue to improve access. I think it's important to mention that there are different ways to measure access to the program, and you've referred to about only 40% qualifying for employment insurance. And I would just point out that that refers to a number when we count all of the people who are currently unemployed in Canada, regardless of whether they have been working recently or not. Specifically, have they been working in the last year? And we also report a figure known as the EI coverage rate, which is about 80% of people who have worked in the last year in employed, in insurable employment.
Dans ce contexte où, moi je l'entends,
In this context, well, I hear about this every week when I talk to workers. They think that since they pay into EI on their pay stub, they think that 100% of people have access to it. Given this situation, have you reflected in your respective directorates on the possibility of having a government program not taken from the EI program for all of these special benefits so that we can help these grieving parents regardless of whether they qualify for EI or not? Because you said at the outset in your presentation, you talked about the number one mandate of the EI program, which is to help people in professional situations, but you said quite well that special benefits reconcile professional and personal responsibilities. So given that this situation affects more the personal lives of individuals outside of the workplace, shouldn't there be government programs dedicated to these individuals and allow the EI program to be devoted to its number one mandate, which is to support people who have lost their jobs because they pay every week into the EI program. They think that this social safety net is there for them when they will lose their jobs. The proof is in our study. There are life situations that arise. We know that people both people are in the job market. We have new responsibilities to address these new realities in the labor market, and shouldn't we have government programs that are dedicated for programs like this?
Maybe we can come back to that question. I'm sorry. You're a minute and a half over, I'm afraid. So we will come back. I promise you'll get another opportunity.
vous êtes gentil.
You're kind.
Gordy.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Ms. Sansusi. I think I was thinking along those same lines in terms of the issues. So it seems to me from your submissions that you've outlined an EI system that's been there, as Ms. Sansusi responded, to respond to those needs of people who've been employed. And as circumstances have come along and you've seen different variables there have been some adaptations. Is that a fair portrayal of how you evolved in terms of a more compassionate response to some of these issues, that you've taken a system that was basically there for professional work and then have adapted it along the way? Is that a fair interpretation?
So I think it's absolutely fair to say that there's been adaptation. I would describe that adaptation as significant over the years in terms of the EI program today versus where it was when it began over 75 years ago. And so if you take a look simply at the benefits that are now paid through the program, there was about $13 billion, roughly, paid in what we call EI regular benefits with respect to job loss. In 16-17, there was more than $5 billion that was paid in EI special benefits at the same time. So that component which is being paid out in terms of maternity, parental, sickness, and caregiving benefits continues to grow in importance, and I think it recognizes that there's a growing importance for workers to be able to take time away from their jobs for what may be family responsibilities. The leave which it accompanies the EI benefits are also then important to hold their jobs so that they have something to return to. So I think there is also some logic to having the benefits within the EI program in terms of a support to the labor market, but certainly arguments have been made and could be made to removing them from the program.
So you're starting to allude to some principles and some values that have driven some of those changes in your last few comments there. Are there some principles or values that are reflected in your practices, in the legislation, in the policies that come out that become the foundation? I think as a society, we want to see ourselves as a compassionate, caring society. We want to be able to respond to the demands of those people who are under severe, perhaps post-traumatic stress disorder, the challenges that come with that. Are there some values or principles that are reflected in any of that, or is that something which
I would say
is operationally driven?
For the EI program at its heart, it is a labor market program, and so it is seeking to ensure an efficient labor market. Where it began when it took a look at job loss was the idea that when someone loses their job, they would have some kind of income support, while at the same time there would be an obligation on that person to be looking for work and trying to find new work. And over time, there have been elements of the program to support those workers as well. And there's an important provincial territorial element that provides employment supports, help finding a job, help with, in fact, ensuring that workers know what they need to do to look for and find a job. So there's an element which is about supporting the worker to get back to work. And on the special benefits side, it similarly has, while it does not have a reporting requirement for that you're looking for work, it does have the element of encouraging the person to return to work after they have taken time away, for example, to welcome a new child to their family or to recover from an illness.
Just, are there any other jurisdictions in the world, if we look around the world, what type of responses do other jurisdictions have to these types of challenges that we're looking at in this study? Are there any best practices out there that we're aware of that we could refer to, any references legislatively practiced policy-wise, or principles or values that are reflected in ways that might provide a foundation for the study that we're involved in now?
So I'm happy to answer that question. In terms of what is offered by other countries, one of the tools we use quite frequently is looking at the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD. They publish annual reports on different types of employment and related and family benefits and leaves. So what we do see is that all OECD countries offer at least some kind of maternity or parental leave, but actually only a few European countries offer a compassionate type leave for the care or even related to bereavement of a family member. And those do tend to vary in duration and vary in terms of whether they're paid or unpaid leaves. I can't comment more specifically, but the OECD does track that on an annual basis.
So from a subjective perspective, would you say that what we're doing in Canada now is on the leading edge of that currently?
I would argue Canada is one of the countries that has quickly come to recognize and provide paid leave, so paid supports through the employment insurance program for the care of a critically ill or injured family member, as well as to provide support to a family member who is at their end of life.
I noticed in the submission they were talking about medical certificates and the engagement of medical doctors and or nurse practitioners for making some judgments. My experience in looking at PTSD and having some experiences with it in some previous life iterations, that people's response to it is very varied, so it becomes a very subjective response to it. How much engagement do we have in terms of with sudden infant death syndrome, with PTSD and the variants of that? Are those judgments made based on, it seems sort of clinical in terms of the framework that we have in terms of policy? How much of that is dictated, or do we have medical health professionals coming in and saying this is this person is suffering from perhaps PTSD and therefore needs to be engaged for a more lengthy period of time? Do we have some flexibility in that, or how are those determinations made?
Very brief answer, please.
We don't know the reason for EI sickness benefits claims. However, we did consult with the medical community in developing the medical forms, the medical certificates required for the EI caregiving benefits.
Thank you very much. Ramesh Sangha, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you today, Andrew and Ruth, coming for today's your valuable input to the committee. We are doing this study to see that how we can improve the level of compassion and support to the parents, grieved parents, and to ensure that parents do not suffer any undue financial or emotional hardship. Losing a child is really a devastating effect on the parents, and it cannot be compensated in terms of the money. Everybody knows we don't. But we want to give something to the parents so that they are able to cope up with hardships. So sickness benefits, when Andrew, you talked about the sickness benefits, you suggested there are some benefits and you advised that parents can go and look for those benefits. And you also talked about the emotional and psychological effect of the grieving, to remove the grief. So is it that you also talked about the sport may provide some measures of assistance for parents in event of loss of child? So you think these grieving parents, those who need the support, and is it that you are telling that you want to provide this by way of counseling, or in terms of directly giving something as a sickness benefit money to them, or both of them?
So I think I'm going to start with that last point there, and just to say that we would see that the EI program, in terms of income support that it can provide to workers and to families in this sense, would only be part of what they would need, and that's the part that I think we could speak to, but they could certainly benefit from other supports which might be provided at the provincial level, perhaps by their employer or perhaps by community-based organizations, in terms of supports that might be provided to grieving individuals and with trying to cope with the situation. So we would only see EI as part of the solution there. I think in terms of a couple things are important to remember. EI is a very large program. We administer over 2 million claims annually. And so something that's really important is that we get to rules that are as clear as possible so that we're able to administer such a large program that affects people across the country. In the event of the death of a child, when a parent's receiving parental benefits, we want it to be as easy as possible for parents to be able to signal that to us, so that we can make the necessary changes. Because one of the concerns we've heard is that in some cases benefits continue to be paid, and so then the result, unfortunately, is that not only is the family dealing with a grieving situation, but when the death of the child becomes known, we actually have to recoup or reach out to that family and seek repayment of benefits that should not have been paid. So we're looking to make that as simple as possible, and the way that happens is that a parent can simply call Service Canada, provide the information about their own claim, and note that the child has passed away. So there's that financial impact as well. In terms of sickness, I said may, because again, so to my point about it being a large program, we don't assess whether the person is sick or not. What we do is require them to provide us with a note from a doctor that indicates they were unable to work due to injury or illness. So in the case of the sickness benefit, if they've received from a doctor that they're not able to work at the moment, then we would accept that as being eligibility for the sickness benefit.
You know, it's different from person to person, parents to parents. Some people are able to cope up early. Some people take more time. It's not healing for the whole life for them. And we also know that, as you talked about the community help and other things, even our families, when we start grieving with them, consoling them, giving them support from the heart, they start recovering soon. Do you have that type of something so that they can recover it easily?
So I don't know if there's any.
What I mean is the same sort
Yeah.
of counseling, you can say community counseling, or at the parents level, at the family levels, they are being hurt more.
So,
in
well, just to
this
say,
type of program?
at the federal level, I'm not aware of a sort of counseling, grievance counseling, for example, that we provide to Canadians, and I think that might be something that is more administered at the local or the provincial level in terms of an individual seeking supports to help them with the situation in terms of coping with either grief or potentially mental health or mental wellness situation.
Thank you very much. And now for 6 minutes, MP Richards, and welcome, sir.
Thank you. Because I'm short on time, I'm going to approach this very factually, but I have to point out that I think it's very important that when we're looking at an issue like this one, we have to look at this and approach it from a compassionate basis, and that is critical. When you have given your remarks here, I appreciate that your job is to provide us information on what's available now, but I will tell you that some of the examples given are not adequate to meet the needs of most of the families who are suffering from loss. The mention of sickness benefits that you so rightly said may be available. I can certainly tell you many stories of parents who were not able to access sickness benefits for grief. A bereavement period 3, and you're saying it's going to be extended to 5 days. Certainly not adequate in almost all cases for people to be able to grieve the loss of a child. And the idea of working on claim, although it may be helpful for those who have been able to qualify, certainly won't do anything for anyone who isn't able to qualify, and I've already indicated that that's the case. You also mentioned, and I appreciated it, that you want to try and do everything you can to make it as easy as possible for parents to be able to signal that this is the situation. What I would ask you is what would be required in order to create a benefit that would be specific for bereavement leave for parents, and to make that happen automatically, so that parents don't have to make numerous calls to Service Canada offices to explain the situation, to tell their story, to put themselves through that grief. That you can appreciate that in this situation, parents, this is not the first thing on their mind about letting Service Canada know what's going on. So how do we create a benefit that would apply for all parents in these situations, and how do we make it so that it would be automatic and we wouldn't need for parents to be able to be thinking of that in the time when they shouldn't have to be thinking about that?
Okay, so thanks for those questions, and I think there's a lot of elements to that, and certainly can understand where that's coming, and the focus on compassion. I guess one thing I would mention right from the start is that for anything that's administered through the EI program, we will have then an issue in terms of whether the person is able to qualify for EI benefits at all or not. So
Sure.
it would be
And I'm not
necessary
trying
to think about whether it would be
Sure.
within the
And
EI
I'm not
program.
trying to cut you
or-
off, it's just the interest of
Okay.
time here. What I want to get to is there a way that we can create this benefit and make it automatic, where maybe information could be provided from the health system, and there's an automatic benefit so people don't have to go through the bureaucratic nightmare to try and find a way to give themselves some time to grieve? Is there a way that, and I understand that they have to be able to qualify for benefits if it's through the EI system, but assuming that's the case, Is it possible to create this? Could it be made automatic? Is that something that could be done if there's a will to do it?
So if there's a will to do it, then I think there is a way to do it. But I think it is. I wouldn't want to give the sense that that's something that's easy to achieve either. In terms of something that is initiated by the death of a person, we would need to think about how could that information, which is probably then captured by provincial territorial authorities, how could that be provided to the federal government, and then how to identify specifically the parents that could benefit from whether it's EI or some other measure. So I think these sorts of things are possible. Not
Good.
necessarily.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. What about the idea of collecting statistics? You mentioned about, in the response to one of the questions earlier, I think it was from Mr. Long, that you didn't really have statistics on these. What would be required for you to be able to collect those kind of stats? And I'll just ask for a real brief one because I do have a few other questions.
So for us to collect that kind of information, we would have to go through a privacy assessment perspective in order to change the nature of the program and the application forms, noting that when we do change application forms, it does create new obligations on medical doctors, nurse practitioners, and others to learn how to fill out the new forms. But there's always a need for a medical form for these benefits. If I can just add to the previous question.
You know what? I'm really sorry. I've got a couple other questions I want to ask, and I've got about a minute to do it. Unfortunately, we're limited here. I wanted to ask a little bit about Service Canada agents and whether they're trained to deal with grieving parents, if they receive any specialized training in regards to that, and if it's possible that there'd be a way to set up a dedicated line. I know for some other streams there is dedicated lines that would deal with grieving parents, that would help them to have someone who would understand their situation, be able to provide the services that are available to them, and really be able to be compassionate about the loss they've received or had. Can you tell us whether there's any training that's received now and whether it would be possible to set something like that up?
So I can certainly say that there are Service Canada agents who are trained to be for various sensitive situations. That said, I'm not aware of a specific line that would be available to parents who have just suffered the loss of a child. Would have to go back to Service Canada to ask about that, but I'm not aware of one existing for that situation.
Thank you. And over to MP Rumi, please.
Thank you very much. I realize how difficult it is for everybody to be here today, especially in your role, because you're following whatever the system is. It's up to legislators to change the system if that's what it comes down to. But the information you're giving us is on the current system. Did you want to add? I know you wanted to add something. I'll give you a quick seconds to add what you wanted to say.
Thank you. I would just like to add that you made a comment about the steps that parents have to take to report a death. There is a process currently that for any family member to report a death to Service Canada, whether it's a parent, a child, whatnot, and that's necessary because there is a process at the federal and provincial level where you need to cancel existing benefits, including the identification cards and programs and benefits that person is receiving. So it is part of the process of dealing with someone's death, and that is a standard process.
Thank you. Some quicker questions just for confirmation. So you need 600 hours to qualify. So if you've got 500 hours, you're out of luck. Is that correct? Correct. Okay. For parents who are on parental benefits, if the child dies, it stops in the week that they died, as you mentioned. But there is is there an opportunity for them to claim sickness benefits? If the doctor, let's say, says, yes, you have PTSD, for instance, would they then be able to qualify for that?
Yes, they would. So someone who has already qualified and is receiving parental benefits would be able to switch from parental benefits to sickness benefits, and there need not be a gap between those two benefits.
That's what I was looking for, so there is no gap. Just for clarification, so maternity benefits, if the child passes away, their benefits continue, right? Okay. Parental benefits for birth or adoptive or same-sex parents, what happens in that case?
So again, if it's parental benefits and
it's the same thing.
Same thing. So the
Okay.
parental benefits end while maternity benefits can continue because they're for a different purpose.
Okay, so now in the family caregiver benefit, how does that work? Because down here, what I'm reading, it says if there's an illness or injury, but it doesn't say if somebody dies. How does that work for the caregiver
So
benefit?
in terms of the caregiver benefits, so again, these are for the family member who is still living, but may be in a critically ill situation or even in a gravely ill situation. That is when they're payable, when someone's providing care to that individual. In the event that that family member dies, the benefits end the same week of that individual's death. So in those cases, just like with parental, the benefit is linked to providing care to that person. And therefore, when the person dies, we're no longer able to pay the benefit.
But again, if then I go to my doctor and I get the necessary
a certificate, indicating that you're unable to work, you may be able to switch from that caregiving benefit to sickness benefits.
and that's fairly seamless if you have the right certificate.
That's right.
So I guess the next question is, how difficult is that? What would the criteria be? Because would you have to prove mental health issues? That's going to be the challenge, is it not?
So in the case of sickness benefits, all that we require is a note from the doctor which indicates that this person is not able to work due to a medical reason for this period. And we don't require even there to be a specific form, but we do require that it indicate the person is incapable of working due to injury or illness, so a medical reason.
Okay. And again, I just want to reiterate, I understand we've all said it, data is key. We're going to need to figure out a way how, without breaching privacy laws, what are those statistics? How many are the uptake? Without this, it's very difficult to make law. So we're going to have to figure out that part. Given all the questions that you're asking here, do you see a way forward that stands out for you?
So I guess there's different aspects of the issue, and it depends what aspects we're we're prioritizing to solve. In terms of other stakeholders, we've had people requesting different kinds of changes to the EI program. One that we've heard, for example, from the Canadian Cancer Society has been to take a look at allowing benefits to continue to be paid for some sort of, I'll call it a grace period, but for compassionate reasons, allow the benefit to continue to be paid for a period of time, perhaps a few weeks before it's cut off. That might also allow the person some time to prepare to return to work, and could also allow the employer some time to return to prepare for the return of the employee. It's also important to remember it's not just the person, but in terms of returning to a job, the workplace that they're returning to. So that's been one thing that's suggested. I think otherwise we've sort of heard here thinking about what are the access requirements to the program in the first place, but I would just say an important thing from our perspective is remembering it's a big program, and so we're looking for clear criteria rather than flexibility. That is a challenging thing to administer in a large program.
Thank you. MP Falk for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you for being here today, and thank you for your brief presentation. I have a question that's, I think, going to follow up kind of with Mr. Rumi's question, but I guess I want to hear confirmation. So, maternity leave for the mother that births the child. That's what maternity leave's for. So, with adopted parents and same-sex couples that don't birth a child, they do not receive the maternity benefits. So, if their child dies while receiving paternal benefits, that's it.
That's right. So in the case where they're not eligible for maternity benefits, parental benefits will end in the week that the child dies.
So then I know it was mentioned and touched on bereavement leave. from the 3 to the 5 days. And to follow up again with what Mr. Rumi said, so, or no, that was sickness. Would there be a gap? Would there be a gap for bereavement? So child dies, their benefits are cut off, then bereavement. What's the process for that? What is the process to receive bereavement if you qualify? Like, what would the gap be?
So, in terms of bereavement, so I know that Rutha had mentioned a new bereavement leave that's available under the Canada Labour Code. So that I'm not able to speak to exactly what the process is to access that. I think an important thing to recognize with the Canada Labour Code is that it applies to the federal jurisdiction, which is only about 6% roughly of workers across the country. And so in many cases, it will really be what the provincial and territorial employment standards are that determine eligibility for leave or other supports in that province or territory.
So are you able to speak to, so if 6% of people in the workforce qualify for that, is the rest up to private sector then of what they're going to offer?
So that 6%, and that's where I'm referring to this new bereavement leave provisions. In terms of the EI sickness benefit, that is something that is national in scope. It's all the people who are contributing to the EI program. So in the event that they seek sickness benefits, that's something that's open to all. But I think in many cases, well, it will depend on the employer, but for some people, they will have coverage of various kinds from their employer, which may be, in fact, more generous than the EI program.
So also too, following up again with Mr. Rumi's question on sickness, some communities struggle with doctors. I know my community, it is very common, sometimes 6 weeks to wait for a doctor's appointment. So if we're asking parents who have just lost a child that they need a doctor's note in order to prove that they are unable to go back to work and they need to access sickness leave, is that a little, in the fact of having to wait 6 weeks, unacceptable to have a delay or a gap of that long in accessing benefits?
So in terms of the EI sickness benefit, medical doctors, specialists, nurse practitioners, psychologists practicing in their field, and some other eligible medical professions that's clarified on our website and our rules are able to sign the medical certificate.
For sure, I understand that, but I'm just thinking rural, remote, northern communities where that is difficult. I mean, just even in my former line of work practicing, we did a lot of video teleconferencing with people living up north because there's nobody there. So I feel that is unacceptable to have to wait and have a gap in the benefits, especially when there's bills that need to be paid and you're grieving.
So I hear about the challenges in the health system and access to health in rural remote communities. It's something we also heard during our consultations on EI benefits previously. That's part of the reason we made the change to allow medical certificates for the caregiving benefits to be signed by a nurse practitioner or a medical doctor. In terms of access to EI sickness benefits, we always counsel claimants or prospective to claimants to contact Service Canada as soon as possible, because under some circumstances, like you always do need a medical note, but Service Canada may provide some more information if there's a possibility to backdate the circumstance or whatnot. But again, it's about the medical note.
Okay, thank you. I have one quick question.
Very quick.
So I know when my colleague, Mr. Richards, had asked a question, and Mr. Brown, you had said, basically, if there's a will, there's a way. So regarding automatic enrollment, or not enrollment, but enrollment, so when we have a death of any, it doesn't matter, beginning, end of life, whatever life stage you're at, is there a way that we can just have that added to even though healthcare is provincial, if we can have that added to the forms so that it is automatically done by doctors or practitioners, just a box that's checked so the family that is grieving and going through the loss of whomever it is doesn't have to deal with that?
Very brief, please.
So I think that, there will always be obligations on us, even in tragic circumstances. So I don't know that it's, possible to to eliminate that entirely. I do think it would be possible to simplify things in terms of the reporting of a death, but I think I just, notes of caution are towards, we have seen situations in the last year where, I'm going beyond my department here, but to Canada Revenue Agency has improperly believed a person to be dead, and that has resulted in terrible consequences to that person. We would have to be extremely careful in this respect as well, to make sure that if things were to be automatically reported with respect to the death of a child, that it didn't have improper consequences on other people. So just to say, there's a lot of work to be able to do things in an automated fashion, and this is also something that would involve not just the federal government, but also provincial territorial governments that would be receiving that information.
Thank you. We're really short on time, but I'm going to allow Madame Sanssouci a very brief question and answer.
Vous avez parlé.
You spoke about how EI is not the only way to help people. In Quebec, we have a number of organizations that defend the rights of people who are unemployed. And there's also another organization that helps grieving individuals. These organizations are underfunded for a defense rights organization. They just work on the Employment Insurance Act. They're underfunded by the government of Quebec because activist organizations just receive a small budget. In your reflections on this study, do you think that you would consider offering funding to these organizations that support the work of ESDC? Is this an avenue that has been explored by the department?
Of our department having explored that sort of additional supports to people in the sense of compassion and being able to provide them with assistance at a time of grief. And my reaction is a little bit of potentially some concern from the federal versus provincial responsibility, as you are certainly aware, with respect to all provinces and often with respect to Quebec in particular, there can be concern about what may be seen as either a federal or provincial responsibility.
We'll see that there are special programs, for example, at Status of Women Canada, that support women organizations that assist women in Quebec, and there are special programs that can be created with government agreements, particularly for organizations that have a federal focus. Yes, I agree. Thank you.
I want to thank both of you for being here this morning on this incredibly challenging issue. We will suspend for just literally 1 minute, so don't go too far, and we'll bring the next witness panel in. Thank you very much. We'll just suspend now. Okay, welcome back. Welcome back. We are now joined by a Member of Parliament from Banff Airdrie, Blake Richards. Welcome, sir. And very pleased to have with us today from Quinn's Legacy Run Society, Lee Cormier, Chair, and Sarah Cormier, Vice Chair. Welcome to both of you, and thank you for being here to share your story. We're going to start with Mr. Richards for 7 minutes, sir.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And I will say, first of all, that it's fitting that this committee begins this study today, because last night many parents across this country participated in the International Wave of Light, where they light a candle in remembrance of the child that they've lost. And, you know, there was events all across the country over the last number of days. I had the privilege of attending some of those memorial events and being there to support many of the families that are, you know, still experiencing a lot of grief. So this is an appropriate time for the study to begin. I guess what I want to start with is to just, you know, first of all, applaud the fact that everyone was so firmly behind our colleague, Mr. Kamek, yesterday when he spoke of his loss and his grief, and called on all to show some compassion for others. And, you know, we were, I think it was united, the House of Commons, in supporting him and showing compassion for his situation. And I would just ask that we give that same support and that same compassion to all families and all parents who are suffering from grief and from loss. And, you know, we certainly had a chance just now to hear from officials about the programs that exist now. But, you know, there are gaps in what's there now. There was a lot of talk about the sickness leave benefits. I can tell you that it does not apply to many families. It doesn't work for many families. Sarah and Lee will share their story here this morning about the letter they received from the government asking them to repay benefits. I can think of so many other families all across this country. You know, an example of that, you know, Rachel and Rob Samuluk from here in Ottawa, who had to tell their story many, many times to numerous Service Canada agents to be able to try to fight for benefits, to get some kind of opportunity to grieve. And she was ultimately forced to return to work, cut back her hours, but returned to work before she was ready. I think of Paula Harmon in Nova Scotia, who wasn't able to get the sickness benefits by claiming that she was receiving them for grief. She was told by a Service Canada official that if she wanted to receive it, the bereavement of a child was not something that would qualify her for sickness benefits. If she was just to go back to a doctor and get them to say something else was the reason that maybe she could qualify for sickness benefits. I think about the mother who was a teacher in Saskatchewan, who was in much the same situation and had to go back to work and be asked questions by her young elementary school students over and over again about what happened to her child. You know, and I can think of people in similar situations all across the country. I can think of a mother in Manitoba who was told she had to go back to the bank to repay the benefits. She couldn't even do that, you know, online or anything else. She had to actually go in person to repay the benefits the government was asking her to repay, and she couldn't bear it. She just physically could not do it. She was physically ill in the parking lot, thinking about the idea of going into the bank because she was in a small town, and she was going to be asked, of course, where was her baby? And I can think of another fellow who I just met the other day in Vancouver by the name of Timothy, who just lost their child about a month ago and was clearly still in horrible stages of grief. You could just see it in his face, and you could hear it in his voice. Still having a really difficult time, and you know, was just sent home by the hospital with no information, no idea as to what they do next, no information on what support might be available, and not in a position to be able to even approach the system to figure that out. So I've just clearly heard just far too many heartbreaking stories, and this committee will hear some of those stories as well. And I can't imagine anyone hearing those stories and not wanting to help. There's parents that have experienced the same frustrations, and they all have the same plea. They're asking for a system that is more compassionate, a system that helps to ease that burden of grief that they're suffering from. When parents are forced to fill out needless bureaucratic paperwork, when they have to personally visit Service Canada locations, when they're being forced to share their stories countless times with Service Canada agents, and they're simply not ready to do that. They're simply not ready. And when they're forced to put themselves through this ordeal, they often end up traumatized as a result, and it really affects their ability to properly heal. So we have to fix this situation. We have to look at ways that we can provide a benefit that will allow parents a little time to grieve. We have to find a way to make it so they don't have to suffer through the system and fight through the system, because many just aren't in a position to be able to do that. They're not. That's just not something that they're in a mental or emotional state to be able to do, and we shouldn't force them to have to do it. That's what we need to do. Now, in the absence of government support, many parents have turned their sorrow into action. They've taken opportunities to advocate for better support and for compassion for the thousands of other families that are affected by this situation every year. They raise funds, they organize walks, they speak up, and they courageously share their stories. And you'll hear from the Cormiers, who are one of those families. And they do that over and over and over again. But they shouldn't have to do that. They shouldn't have to do that. We should be there for them. We should provide what they need. The emotional turmoil that a family is going through when they discover that they've lost a newborn is difficult enough. And so when we force these parents to have to go visit Service Canada and make these phone calls to banks and other institutions to find out what's available to them, it's not something they should have to do. That's clearly a flaw in our system. And it's a problem that we can and a problem that we must fix. It's time for us as parliamentarians to join in helping the families that have suffered through this tragedy of pregnancy and infant loss. I believe that we can do more to stand up and find better ways to support Canadian families by listening to the parents who have lost an infant. So I want to thank all of those who've helped to get this motion to the point where we're studying it here in committee, the people who've written letters, they've signed petitions, they've called their members of parliament. I want to thank the MPs from all sides who've helped to push this issue along. But we aren't done yet. Having a study at committee isn't enough. There can't be any excuses. Words aren't enough. Symbolism isn't enough. And we can't just stand by and have this study and then let it gather dust on a shelf somewhere. We actually have to take action. So please, please, committee members, I urge you to make some recommendations and to be forceful about the fact that you expect the government to take action. Please. We need to do this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Richards. Now we will, for 7 minutes, we will hear from Lee and Sarah Cormier. It's 7 minutes are yours.
Thank you. We'll just take our quick 7 minutes here just to kind of give you an idea what our story is like. So picture yourself the day after you've lost your 4-month-old child. What does that look like? What goes through your mind? Your child is gone. You have to tell your friends and family. You have to explain death to your other child and why your sister is gone. A husband has to tell his work why he can't come in. Your wife's breasts ache to feed your baby because that doesn't end with the death of a child. What do you do now? Why don't I feel like getting out of bed? Did we eat today? What day is it? How do we get through the next few minutes, let alone weeks or months? Is there someone else like me? This hasn't happened to anyone else I know. What doesn't go through your mind is, who do I call about parental benefits? Do I need to inform anyone? What happens if I get another payment now that my child is gone? How do I pay my bills? I can't answer the first questions for you. I still don't have all the answers. But I'd like to talk to you about the things that you don't think of. When your child dies, parental benefits are cut off. If you do not inform the federal government of the loss, and you receive any other payments, you'll be required to repay them. For us in 2014, we had to pay back January's child tax credit. Quinn died on December 28th. On January 3rd, we had her funeral, and on January 5th, we stood in line at Service Canada. The employee told us that we were lucky that we didn't have to pay back the next week's benefit. The words that she used were, "Your child ceases to exist, so therefore the benefits will cease to exist. Your bills will continue to come due. The world doesn't stop." And this means that for most Canadian families, they'll be required to return to work long before they're ready. We're personally blessed with an amazing support system. Our family and friends rallied around us and cared for us. We had people to ask the right questions and sit on hold with Service Canada to get the answers, and still we had to go to the office to get through. I personally know of families that had to pay back 1, 2, 3, or even more months of benefits. We have families that would pay our bills out of their own pocket so that we could have the time to grieve. I know of families who've had to return to work the next week because they couldn't afford to be off. The trauma of losing a child is not something that should be taken lightly. The victim of an accident is covered by disability insurance. Someone who's lost a limb is covered, but someone who's not in their right mind because of their loss has nothing. We're asking for a commitment of 12 weeks out of the lifetime that should have been spent. The federal government has already committed to fund 12 months of dirty diapers and sleepless nights. We're asking for a commitment of 12 weeks of tears and sorrow, remembering and grieving. Everything else to say?
I think we're good, yeah.
I think that's all.
First up, MP Barlow, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and certainly I want to thank the Cormiers for coming here and telling us your story. I can't imagine how difficult that is, but all of us, we're certainly touched with our colleague, Mr. Kimmich, what he went through, and it certainly it brings it much closer to home when one of your good friends has to experience it, as I'm sure your family and friends have done. And to my colleague, Mr. Richards, certainly appreciate the work that you've done on this. A lot of these things I can honestly didn't realize the obstacles and the hurdles that you as parents had to go through until you've had to experience that. And I think certainly if the testimony that we've had today from yourselves and from the officials show that we have a significant gap in our system, that we are asking parents to go through this, and whether it's the language that was used at Service Canada, or the fact that your child passes away on a Tuesday is more beneficial than a Thursday, and it can be quite frustrating. Really, I want to ask you, Sarah and Lee, from your own experiences, and you heard the officials here this morning as well. In your opinion, what would you like to see come from this, or what are some of the obstacles or hindrances that you would like to see changed as part of this study to make that very difficult situation at least a little bit easier for you and your family?
I can answer that. Do I just press a button? Okay. For me, there was mention of the sickness benefits quite often this morning. I had used the sickness benefits prior to the birth of Quinn because the pregnancy was considered high risk, so that I wasn't entitled to that. So I believe I'm not the only person that would use those sickness benefits prior to the birth of a child. I know I had used them previously again with our most recent birth of a child. So the biggest hindrance, I guess, is just like Lee said, there we were on the Monday, just 2 days after we had laid Quinn to rest, at the Service Canada office, standing in line with everyone else, holding that death certificate, just shaking, not knowing what to do. And that was like the first time we had to tell the story and you're telling it very publicly. So that's a huge hindrance. You know, we had family and friends try and call on our behalf, but they needed to hear from us. So that's why we ended up down there. We also, yeah, there's just so many. We looked online. Obviously, our generation looks online automatically, and there was nothing online on the Service Canada website that directed us what to do. There was, if you lost a parent or you lost your spouse, this is what you should do, but not what you should do if you had lost your child. You know, he spoke this morning about canceling cards. You know, Quinn was 4 months old. We had just received her birth certificate, and we had just received her health care card, and now we're receiving a death certificate. We got that death certificate way faster, like within minutes, versus getting a birth certificate. And we kept them both. Like, it's so painful to hold them both in your hands and know that someone else holds that in their hands around what you're going to do next.
Thank you. And Blake, maybe it's a bit easier for you to talk about some of the, I know you've had lots of discussions with lots of families who have experienced this, and you know, and I know the work that you've done on this, but maybe you can articulate a little bit on what you're hoping to achieve, and some of the things that, from the stories from people like Cormier's that you've had discussions with, what are some of the things that you'd like to see changed as part of the study, and some of the recommendations? Are there some specific things you'd like to see come out of this?
Well, I think I think the key to this whole thing is we have to find a way to recognize the grief that these parents are suffering from, with a special benefit that applies to them, because we're hearing, you know, and we heard it this morning from the Service Canada officials, what we're hearing is, well, this might work, that maybe could apply, and everything is kind of, well, this, you know, it's trying to find a way to put it in another place where it doesn't belong. And, you know, Sarah correctly mentioned that, you know, many people, you know, if they're going through a difficult pregnancy, they might use those sick leave provisions that are available during the pregnancy. So then they're not eligible to access, because that was the one that's most frequently cited here as something that could be used. But it won't be possible if someone's used it already. And it certainly isn't. I can tell you the story of Paula Harmon in Nova Scotia and how she went through a whole process. And, you know, this is the people who were strong enough to be able to even go through the process. You heard Sarah just now talk about how difficult that was. Some people just aren't able to bear putting themselves through the numerous phone calls and visits that are required to do this stuff. But if they can bear to do that, if they have the strength to do that, they still may not be able to get the sickness benefits. You know, her story was that the Service Canada person came back and said, look, bereavement of a child does not qualify you for sickness benefits, but maybe if you could go back to the doctor and get them to write something else like stress or something, maybe you could get it then. Could you imagine being told that by a government official? So I think what needs to be done here is there needs to be the ability, and we have, there's other examples of situations that are similar where we provide benefits like this for specific situations. This is one that I think we can all, anyone who's a parent should be able to appreciate and understand, that this would be the most difficult situation that any of us could ever go through, losing a child. So could we not show a little compassion and provide some kind of a benefit to allow people a little time to grieve and get over this terrible and tragic circumstance, and not force them to spend that time dealing with Service Canada agents and banks and other institutions with numerous phone calls. I mean, I can tell you stories of people who had to share their story 10 or 12 times with government officials in order to try and fight for benefits. I mean, why are we doing that to these people? So let's make this something that they can receive automatically, and that will be tailored for their needs. I think it's the least we can do.
Thank you. Now over to MP Boissonnault. First of all, welcome to our committee, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, everybody. Mr. and Mrs. Cormier, thank you for being here and for your story. I experienced what you experienced as a sibling, as a child. When I came into the world, my parents had already lost one infant in 69. I was born in 70. I saw my dad cry the first time in 75 when we lost my sister Lisa. And then Gilles didn't come home from the hospital. He was hydrocephalic, was missing a ventricle in his heart, died 10 days after he was born. And that's when I started my battle with faith and God. Because how do you take a 10-day-old baby away? And then we lost my sister at 20 years old. And so I don't know how a marriage survives after losing 4 kids, but they did it. And the government wasn't there. Nobody was there. We had family, we had faith, we had friends. I remember days and weeks of food just arriving because nobody was cooking. You don't know which day of the week it is. You don't even want to get up. This was as a sibling. When I took my sister's books back to McEwen and they asked me what was the reason I wanted to take the books back, I just looked at them with steely eyes and I said, death. I wasn't Mr. Nice Guy. I was still grieving over the loss of my sister. So we don't need a piece of legislation for us to go to see Minister Duclos today and tell him that his people in Service Canada need better training. You don't talk about a human being ceasing to exist and so your benefits cease to exist. That's just wrong. So we can do that today. So you are here and you're very brave and I want to thank you both. And my condolences to you for your loss. Blake, Mr. Richards, thanks for putting this on our radar screen. I know you've been in politics a lot longer than I have been. And my question to you is the employment insurance place the best place for this idea? Because I'm not sure that it captures the full Venn diagram of who you're intending to catch and who I would want to catch as an uncle. The CCB, you don't have to agree with it politically, but it's clean. And if you're on the tax rolls, you get the benefit. So I'm wondering if this isn't a similar thing where you're a parent, you have a child, that child passes away, the death certificate at Service Canada, that's all you need. Don't go through the EI system. It's an automatic. If your child dies and they're 18 or younger, because they would qualify for the benefits otherwise, those benefits should go to you for the 12 weeks that the guests are proposing. You could do it out of the paternal benefits for the first 0 to 12 months, but that won't cover everybody from 1 to 17. And so maybe there is a CCB parallel here that's just a child bereavement benefit program, and run it through finance and run it through the tax rolls, because people won't qualify through EI. There's 2 million claims. People are going to get lost in the shuffle, and quite frankly, you're not going to fight to the same degree that somebody's going to fight for their weekly benefits because you don't have your full wits about you. So I know how difficult it is to get to where you have with your piece of legislation. I'm not suggesting you change the whole world about this, but if there was a cleaner way to get the benefits to the people who are asking for it, is that something that you would be prepared to look at? Because I'm happy to go talk to Minister Morneau and his team to say, this seems to me to be a cleaner way to get to this end state.
Well, first of all, I'll say, obviously that's the purpose of the study, is for the committee to look at the options that are available and make some recommendations in terms of what this would look like. The key for me in this, and my thoughts, and certainly having talked to many of these parents and families all across the country, I think it's fairly widely held belief that the crucial aspects of this are that there's something that's done that is going to provide a period of time that is reasonable, and we'll certainly, through the course of your study, hopefully hear from experts in grief and medical experts and others who can maybe give us some suggestion on how long that should be. But something that would provide the period of time necessary to grieve, something that would replace the income so someone doesn't have to return to work, and something that would be automatic or very close to it, so that the parents don't have to go and fight for it, they don't have to tell their story over and over again. I'm certainly not married to how that would be delivered, but that it be done.
Okay.
And that's the key principles in that.
I don't sit at HUMA, so just coming in with fresh eyes. I mean, if you can have a clean way, and it seems to me the cleanest thing, one of the cleanest things that we've done is the CCB. It's automatic. 9 out of 10 families get it. A question for Mr. and Mrs. Cormier. You mentioned that, the 12 months of diapers we're going to get paid for anyway. So why couldn't we have 3 months? Does it make sense to you to have one benefit, whether it's the maternity benefit or the Canada Child benefit for 3 months, or should both be in place? Does it matter to you? Like, which would have helped you? What would have helped you?
Really, again, we're kind of the same you know, the same intention, the same attitude that Mr. Richard is as well, that really for us, at that point in a family's grief, they're not really concerned, you know, where the benefits are coming from or who is supporting them. Just that there is a place for the government just to support these families, no matter which way it comes.
I appreciate that, because the bills pile up and you don't want to open the mail.
They do.
And you just want to make sure that at the end of the couple of months that everything's going to balance.
Right.
And you're not going to be in the hole. So
Right.
I appreciate your sharing your story with us today. Thank you both. Thanks, Blake.
Thank you very much. MP Sansusi.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I thank my colleague, Mr. Richards, to allow us to reflect on this issue. I would also like to thank Mr. and Mrs. Cormier, because I can understand what courage it takes for you to come relive these moments in front of us and to share your story with us. And I thank you for doing so on behalf of all of the parents who have lived through the same situation as you. What I find interesting this morning is how, as MPs who have heard stories from our constituents in our respective ridings, our questions are kind of going along the same lines. In the first hour, I thought it was interesting to hear senior public servants from Service Canada saying that we could consider separating special benefits from the EI program, because I think that increasingly, and your testimony underlines this, the EI program, in my opinion, is not the right tool for special benefits. You can't ask someone who is grieving or who is sick to navigate the same maze as someone who's lost their job. I think that that's obvious, and the senior public servant said it is possible to have government programs that aren't part of the EI program, and which in any case doesn't meet the needs of those who lose their jobs. I think it's also important, and you highlighted it, that there are women who find themselves in a situation, and especially women who are outside of Quebec, who are in situations where they no longer have access to benefits because they would need to return to work to accumulate a sufficient number of hours to access benefits. You said that it's difficult to gain access to Service Canada, to figure out the system. In Quebec, we have organizations called whose mandate is to help people navigate the EI program. And these organizations have a lot of demand. They're underfunded. The government of Quebec doesn't recognize their contribution because they're dedicated to a federal act. So these organizations are really underfunded, and they're community organizations. And senior public servants said it's not just a matter of benefits. There's also support that can be given to those who are making requests. In preparation for our study, we found that there are benefits for victims of crime. And that's really a separate program. The beneficiary can return to work part-time, continue to receive benefits, and there are terms and conditions very particular to the program. I think it's an intelligent way to establish a process to not go through the EI program, to really have a dedicated program that takes into account the specificities of what people experience in this situation. So my question is this, and you were there for the first hour. In your opinion, should we move towards a dedicated program like the one I just described for victims of crime outside of the EI program?
Well, again, I'll reiterate that I'm not married to how the benefit would be delivered. I think the key principles here are that it be something that allows the correct period of time for parents to grieve and deal with the situation that they're suffering through. That it be something that that replaces income, so they don't have to worry about work when they're not in a position to be able to do that, and that it be something that be automatic or close to automatic, so that they don't have to deal with all the bureaucratic hurdles and nightmares that we're putting families and parents through right now. I certainly believe that it certainly could work under the EI system. I think there, because there are other special types of benefits that are available under the EI system, and we've proven that it could work that way. But I don't think that's the only way it could be done. Certainly, if there is other ways that can be suggested that this can work, as long as those principles are intact in terms of the three things I've outlined there, I believe that it could work in other ways as well.
Okay.
Do I have time left? And I also think that we must have an openness as a committee to explore different avenues. Could that mean, if we think that the Service Canada system is the one, we could make a recommendation that the government should, when the government stopped paying into the EI program at the beginning of the 1990s, they should make a contribution to demonstrate our political will to support these people.
Wayne, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to the Cormiers, I'm so sorry for your loss, and I do thank you for the courage to come in and tell us your story, so we can learn and we can work together. Like Mr. Richards said, this isn't a partisan issue. This is something where all parties should come together and do what's right. Lee, one thing you talked about when you were speaking to us, you talked about you couldn't have got through without the support of family, friends, what have you. And I mean, it's quite obvious that, a lot of people that go through this don't have that family support system. So can you just share with us what's out there for support? NGOs, non-government organizations, other organizations, because I kind of want to focus just on the support available. And I'm so sorry what happened to you at Service Canada. I mean, as MPs, we deal with that, really day in and day out, that somebody's calling and complaining that they were treated like a number and they weren't treated with any compassion, in many issues. Not to defend the Service Canada workers at all, but, I think they, after a certain amount of time, almost become dehumanized, because I think, the phone calls just keep coming and coming and coming. You see it all the time. So I guess where my head is right at this moment is there organizations out there across the country that potentially government could work with, support, whether it's, financially or what have you, to offer that, personal touch and show compassion to families that are, people that need it. Can you just kind of share with us your opinions, and maybe, Blake, I'll get your opinion on that after.
Sure, thank you.
Sure.
So all I can speak of is our own experience, really.
Sure.
The organization that we've put together, really, Quinn's Legacy Run Society, is specifically to support families with a bursary, just that they can use in any way that they feel that they need to pay bills, or to use for the funeral, or anything like that.
I'll just jump in real quick. Is it family specific, or is it a set amount, or how does it?
It's a set amount, so it's a.
Go ahead, sir.
It's a one-time financial payment that we have set up in trust. So we raise funds, and then it's given in the amount of $2,000 to the family. We felt like that was what we needed to get through the first couple of weeks to pay for a funeral, and so we thought if someone gave us that, it would be sufficient. So we decided to start to do that for other unexpected or SIDS losses.
And are there a lot of families, people applying?
There is. We have supported 6 families since 2015, but we are only doing like Calgary and area. But there is lots of families that have reached out to us across the country.
So to your knowledge, are there other organizations prominently or doing a good job across the country that are there for families to reach out to?
Yeah, for us, we reached out to Baby's Breath here in Ottawa. I'm also the chair of SIDS Calgary Society, so we provide peer support to families and are focused on research into SIDS and undetermined deaths in Canada. We access the Rotary Flames House in Calgary for counseling, and I believe that almost every child that dies at the Children's Hospital in Calgary is entitled to access to the Rotary Flames to see a grief counselor specifically.
Okay.
But there aren't, the
But
best of my knowledge,
it's not
yeah.
adequate.
No.
It's not adequate.
Yeah, there's definitely not that in Edmonton.
Okay.
We have met lots of families just north of us that don't have that same access. So it's very specific town to town. We've supported families just outside of Calgary that didn't have access to that support.
So it's safe to say that, in pockets of the country,
Yeah.
maybe most of the country.
And I would say that those pockets came from bereaved parents like ourselves
Yes.
that
Yeah.
are fighting for their child. For us, it's a way to parent our child and so that Quinn's never forgotten. It brings us great joy to say her name and say that there's a legacy.
You're making a difference.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's what you see. You see the Von Sawchuk Foundation in Cochrane, Hazel's Heroes in Calgary.
So,
yeah.
Okay, so just to follow that, and I'll go to Mr. Richards if it's okay. So there are, these organizations that are coming up, mainly from bereaved parents who have lost someone. Is there an opportunity to do something with a NGO across the country that we could, as government, we could partner with to offer that, to kind of offer more personal care? Like kind of instead of there's one here and there's one there and there's none there, is there an opportunity to do something like that, you think? Because I'm more focused on the support, I guess.
Quick response, please.
Yeah, that's there potentially could be something that could be looked at. Certainly, it would need a little bit of more exploration. There's no question. I mean, Sarah's laid it out well. I think this does exist in some places. There are organizations like Quinn's Legacy Run Society and others that I'm aware of all across the country that some are focused more on providing support or counseling, these kinds of things. Some are providing assistance of some kind. So there's a variety of different focuses of these various organizations, but many of them do exist, and it's always parents who've been through this themselves and understand how hard it is. So certainly if something could be looked at in terms of partnering with them, I would certainly be open to seeing what that might look like.
Thank you.
But the key again is whatever's done here has to be something that can apply to all families and provide them what they need. That might be the difficulty in this, but certainly it might be something the committee might want to explore.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Mr. Rumi, please.
Thank you very much for coming today. I can't even imagine what it takes to get on a plane and come down here and open yourselves up to this. I suspect that as we go through this, the things that we have to ask questions to try to understand, especially if you're looking at the EI system. The EI system is a very complicated system because, as you heard today, 2 million people apply for claims throughout the year. I don't know if the EI system is going to be as empathetic to these types of challenges. But I think we all agree that there's other things that we can do through different venues, and that's kind of like where we're going to have to continue asking those questions. what works, what makes sense, how can we move forward, and you know, my colleague mentioned the CCB. My eyes just sparked up because, wow, that actually kind of makes sense because you're already getting funding, right? And whether there's a grace period in there, it could be a seamless thing. I think when you are, my dad passed away last year, and as much as we knew he was going, nobody prepared anything. No funeral costs, no nothing. And in your case, it's a surprise. So I can't even imagine, because we went through quite a bit just to figure out how we're going to pay for the funeral costs. So I think we're all very empathetic to that. I'm blown away by your efforts with Quinn's legacy, and I think that's part of how you're trying to heal yourselves and your families. And I think there's potential for us to support something like that. How do we take what you do and what others have done, because clearly there is a healing process that's involved with that. How do we take that and support that? I think what you need is that more than some bureaucrat telling you, give me a piece of paper. So we're going to have some questions that we're going to have to keep asking, and they're hard questions because nobody wants to ask that question. I mean, at some point, you have to bring a certificate to Service Canada and let them know. I don't know how you get away from that. But it doesn't have to happen in that same week. That's clear. I mean, when you heard that your EI runs out in that same week, it's hard to hear that. There should be a built-in grace period that you don't have to engage at some point. I don't know how we do that, and part of what we're doing is asking those types of questions and relying on the experts and relying on the folks who are going through these challenges. So I really don't have questions for you, because I think that you've laid it out quite clear for us. It's more of, where do we go from here? So there's a couple of minutes. I'm just going to leave it open for you. If there's anything else you want to share with us, I'll leave that up to you. And I think my hope is that we can move forward and find constructive ways to move forward with this. If you want to add anything, I'll leave that up to you.
Yeah, I think just really what we're here today looking for is just it's been said a couple times, is just the seamless transition, and then just the ability for families to just not have to discuss this immediately with whether it's Service Canada agents or however that that starts to unfold. But really, I think that's the key for us, is that just that there is that time, that grace period given to families, so that they can find a way to cope and just figure out what new life looks like for them. Some people will take longer, some people less time, but we just have to find a good overall offering that we can give to the Canadian people.
And if I can just add a couple of comments as well. First of all, you've mentioned the idea of a grace period, like rather than having it cut off in that week, and you made the comment that I don't know how that would look. I don't actually think that would be that difficult to do. It simply be a recommendation from this committee that there be a change to the period of time after which the benefits cease to exist. That would be a very easy change to make, actually, to allow people a little time before they have to start to approach Service Canada and things like that. Would be simple, very easy for this committee to recommend, and very easy to do. The other thing I'll point out, and it's been raised a number of times by different members, about, is there other ways this can be done? The idea has been raised about the CCB. I'm not certain that is going to be something that will replace the income of people so they don't have to go back to work. So I'm not sure that particular program is necessarily the one that's going to do it unless you're going to increase it significantly in the period of time at that point. But having said that, I think as long as, if these questions are being asked and the ideas are being circulated that way with a genuine belief that we have to make sure we meet those principles, I'm certainly supportive of other ways that this can be done. But you know, the EI system is the one that sort of was identified previously as maybe the most set up in the best way. It's already something that exists, right? But having said that, you know, if out of a genuine place people are looking for other avenues, fine. As long as it's going to be something that is going to allow people the amount of time they need to grieve, as long as it is going to replace the income so they don't have to consider going back to work. I mean, there's a lot of people who don't have this family or the friends that or the support, and you know, organizations like Quinn's Legacy Run, that is very helpful for someone who's aware that they exist, and that's not something that is going to necessarily be that you're going to be aware of, unfortunately. And so we have to make sure that whatever we do is something that is going to meet those principles. So I really urge the committee to make sure you're thinking about it that way, and not just simply trying to find a way to put it somewhere else, but that it's done with the principles in mind, that we have to ensure that we're providing something that's going to be possible for everyone to access, that it's going to be able to replace a little bit of income so that people don't have to consider going back to work, you know, within days of their child passing away. Because as you very correctly pointed out, Mr. Rumi, it's not something that people ever expect, right? I mean, we prepare for the idea that our parents at one point are going to pass away. We prepare for the fact that a spouse might pass away at some point. These are things we have in life insurance, we have savings to deal with. Nobody's ever thinking about that when they're about to have a child. So we're not prepared, and you know, most times, of course, it's people early in their life, and there isn't savings yet because they're just getting started. So this is not something that most people are prepared for, and financially, it can put people in a very difficult position, and we have to consider that as well. So,
thank you, MP Folk, please.
First of all, Sarah and Lee, I want to thank you for sharing your story and being a voice and an advocate, especially like we're hearing some people don't have advocates by their side. So I want to thank you for taking that torch and doing that. There's a couple things that I just wanted to touch on. One question with the CCB, some families don't receive CCB, so that would be something that we would have to make sure isn't overlooked, that those children aren't overlooked, that aren't part of that program, if that's a way that, you know, this committee decides to do a recommendation. I heard some things in your opening statement, and I just want confirmation on them to make sure I'm not making any assumptions. There was nothing on Service Canada website. Was there anything on any government website of anything or direction of what to do after a loss of a child?
No, I was just going to jump in there at the end too, just that ease of information. Like there was a ton of information, like preparing a will.
For everybody else.
Yeah, but just not for an infant child.
So having even a recommendation of some sort of areas that someone could be directed, contact, that type of thing?
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely.
On their website, okay?
Yeah, ease of information.
Service Canada. So it's interesting being on this committee just with my past work experience. So I was a social worker in my past work experience, and it is very easy to become immune to terrible situations, to death, and to people. And we actually, when I was doing my training, there was practices that they would have us do for ourselves. Some of that includes self-care and that type of thing, so that people don't become inhumane, right? Because people are people have feelings, and it's too easy to treat somebody like a number. And I've been through the EI system myself, having children, and so has my husband. My husband took parental leave with our youngest. And now I want you to correct me, but do you think that Service Canada workers should have some type of compassionate training or some type of training that emphasizes the humanity of humans, and that, yes, I do have another call I need to make, but right now you're here, you're my client, and I need to be a human to you. Do you think that Service Canada employees would benefit from some type of training, compassionate training like that?
I think it's definitely something that is overlooked. I think for sure it's a coping mechanism as well for them to treat people, you know, like numbers. It's a lot of, they get bombarded with a lot of different issues, and they have to know, they're expected to know everything about every different situation that they're put in. You know, so again, I think it just becomes a coping mechanism for them to just put everything as the, you know, the same situation, and this is how we deal with it. This is what the book says. This is how it gets dealt with. You know, so any kind of training that they could take to be able to deal with some of these specific situations would be beneficial.
I know, just in my experience working with bureaucracy, it's very black and white, and there is no gray, there is no grace, there is none of that. It's either you're here or here, and if you're not here or here, you're not here. So, right? So I appreciate that. I just wanted to make a comment too. You made a very good point, Sarah, about sick leave. When I was pregnant with my kids, I wasn't overly sick, and I didn't have to take that sick leave. But I think it is something that this committee needs to be wary of, just, you know, in the future, especially with a lot of women going into trade fields, going into different type of workplaces that could be hazardous, that aren't able to work while they're pregnant. And that gives them the opportunity, if they're paying into EI, to take those sick benefits. And I think that's something that the committee should be mindful of, that some women aren't working up to the end of their pregnancy because they can't, because it's unsafe, high-risk pregnancy like you had, that type of thing. Again, I just really want to thank you guys for being here today and sharing your story and carrying the torch on this very difficult topic.
Much. That brings us to the end of this first meeting on this study. I want to thank both of you for coming here today and sharing your story with us. I'd like to thank Mr. Richards for authoring this study to encourage us to do this work. We will be just one little housekeeping thing before we break. We will likely be having to cut our meeting on Thursday short, just so you can prepare in terms of questions and so on. Excuse me, not this Thursday, the Thursday after, as a result of being addressed in the House, I believe, by the Dutch Prime Minister. Thank you. Netherlands, Dutch, yeah. Thank you very much, everybody, and we will adjourn. Thank you.